All right, for today, we'll finish up or wrap up our discussion on Chapter 15. There's just a couple more ratios that we have to cover. As I mentioned last Tuesday, the test is open today, so if you wish to take your exam today on Chapter 15, you certainly can do so. I'm going to have to shut the door here. Hold on one second, guys. Okay. As I also mentioned, the exam is open till next Tuesday, so you do have until then to complete it. I will be either around campus or maybe I won't be here during the test time on Tuesday, which is 1:30 to 3:20, the normal time. But if you are planning on taking it and you want me to be available, just let me know what time you are going to be taking it so that I can kind of watch my emails if you do have questions. So hopefully that's okay with everyone. Let's look at what we have to cover yet. Like I said, I do have the, what I handed out last week, the overview ratios. We are currently looking at our second page here. We looked at return on sales, return on assets. We basically ended up at the return on stockholders' equity section, and what's left is from there down to the bottom where we have the price earnings ratio. And in many cases, these ratios are not used by our smaller companies. These are the ones used by obviously the large companies with corporate stock in them. Maybe these are the ones that are on the New York Stock Exchange, those type of companies, very large companies, would be involved with these type of ratios. So our return on stockholders' equity begins on page 857 of our book, basically where we are at. And when we look at the word return, we are looking at a profit measurement and the amount of return that our stockholders would get on their investment. Remember, with all of our investors, they have a choice, right? They can either invest in our company, that's the goal, or if the return is not large enough for their investment, obviously they'll move it to somewhere where they think they can get a higher return. So this is a very important measurement, one that is closely watched, again, by those larger corporations. So how do we compute it? It's a division, and the formula is here. And you'll notice here, when we're looking at stockholders' equity, we are looking at the common shareholders. And that is why we take our net income and we're going to subtract the preferred dividend. Remember, preferred dividend shareholders get preference. They're preferred. They are the first ones paid out of that income. So that's why we take it out of the net income. Because as common shareholders, we don't get anything until the preferred is first paid. So once we have that subtraction done, we then divide by the common stockholder equity amount. Now, this is an average. Obviously, that would mean you look at year one and the end of the year. And the example on page 844, 845 has this computation. The data for this is on these two pages. And I just want to mention these two numbers here. Remember, to get an average of common share, we have to divide by 2, right? The beginning of the year, it was 11,724,000. The end of the year was 12,800,000. The average is 12,262. Obviously, this is the denominator that we're looking for on our ratio. And obviously, the numerator is our net income. But when getting these two numbers, the 11,724,000, we basically have to take our stockholders' equity in dollars now, and we're going to subtract our preferred stock. So if you look at these couple of pages, I'm going to go turn to that right now. don't think they're in the slides themselves, the data. They're not. So I'm going to turn my page, where am I located? 844 in the book. And the total stockholders' equity is, jump into that part, 14,924,000 at the beginning of the year. And they subtract off of it the 3.2 million of preferred stock. And the reason, again, we want to be sure that we are looking just at the common shareholder amount. What do they have available to them as part of their investment, right? So that's how they're getting 11,724,000. And you'll have to do this also on your problem, to subtract off the preferred stock from the total stockholders' equity amount. The second one, obviously the 12.8, is the subtraction of 16,000, well, they say 16,000, 16 million, and subtract off again the 3.2 to get the 12.8. So that's really the tricky part on this particular computation, is coming up with that average common shareholders' equity. Are there any questions on coming up with those two amounts? So hopefully that's a good reference if you wish to go back to it. Guys at home, are you all right with that? Everybody comfortable where I'm getting this 11,724,000? Okay, awesome. Great, thank you guys for responding. This is just the computation, and they end up with a number, a percent. Again, here it's 16% roughly. Once we subtract off the preferred stock, remember preferred stock is, or preferred dividends, I'm sorry, is taking the percentage, right, the 7%, we multiply it by the par value of the preferred stock, and that's what gives us our 224 amount. They get that amount paid first, right? So that's why we have to take it off of the net income, which in this case, the net income was 2.3 million. So we take our 2.3 million of net income, we subtract off per preferred. Our numerator then is $2,076,000. And that's what we divide by the average common shareholder amount of 12 million, which we computed previously. All right, so they have next on pages 858 a little snippet on Coca-Cola Company and how they use their profitability ratios, and earnings per share is the most popular, right? And that's what they talk about here. What did I make per share on the investment? So if you get a chance, they also talk about here operational water footprint, billions of liters used. So it's interesting how in many cases now a lot of companies are giving non-financial and more environmental information. A lot of investors want to invest in companies that are reducing their carbon footprint, right? Or trying to improve or reduce the environmental waste that is occurring in so many operations. So if you get a chance, take a look at that. Our next profitability computation then is earnings per share. It is the most popular of them all. And how do we compute it? It's similar to our return on shareholders' equity. The only difference here now is our denominator turns or changes to number of shares outstanding, right? And you probably come across this in intermediate, maybe accounting 2, had some of these same computations. And the word average comes up again. It's a weighted average right throughout the year. In most cases, many of our problems, you'll have an amount at the beginning of the year, and then you'll have an amount at the end, so you only have to divide by 2 to get the average throughout the year. Now, when we're looking at shares, a lot of times we don't give you the share amount. So you have to take the dollar value of the common shares. I'm only looking at the common shares here. And let's just say it's 3 million. Well, if the par value of that common share is $100, you'll have to compare or compute the number of shares outstanding by dividing by 100. Well, that's 30,000 shares. So there might be a small additional computation to get that cost, that par cost, 3 million as my par value at $100 a share, and convert it into shares. So just be aware of that when we're coming up with this earnings per share computation. And we'll hit some of that today as we go into our problems shortly. Example 11, if you want to try one, is on page 859. They have the steps here. How much is the preferred dividends? We got to take that off of net income. Step 2, again, how many common shares are outstanding? And then finally, we can compute our earnings per share. So this is pretty much the standard process to come up with that ratio. Remember, this is one of the profitability ratios used by many companies to see how they're performing. And obviously, based on this number, any change in this number from year to year or period to period obviously will influence the market price, right? How much are company or people willing to pay for your stock? So here we have, again, our 224,000 preferred stock coming off of our net income. We've got a par value for common shares of $2, which is divided into the, again, common shares amount, which is 1.6 million. That means we have 800,000 shares outstanding. And that's what our denominator is, 800,000, which is divided into our net income once we subtract the preferred dividends. So the answer, 2.6. Look to and see now, in a lot of cases, see now is looking for that answer rounded to 2 places, 3, as many as 4 decimal places. So be careful with the rounding process when entering your answers. Okay. Any question on coming up with the number of shares, guys? At home here? Number of shares? Par value? Everybody good? Okay. Thanks, guys. All right, we go on to our lesser known computations in this section. Price earnings ratio, simply market price divided by earnings per share price or amount. And again, investors look for a difference, right? The larger the number, maybe the price is a good price for that particular share, or maybe it should be lower. It's purely an investor viewpoint as to what is the spread, right, between the market price versus the earnings per share. So a simple division, and the only thing here, guys, is if you have the earnings per share incorrect, obviously the price earnings ratio computation will also be incorrect. So be careful with this. It's it's a double whammy because a lot of these problems have both ratios in them. So if you get the earnings per share wrong, you're never going to get the price earnings ratio correct. Kind of the nature of the beast, they feed off of each other, right? It just talks about market price. Example 12 is the example. It says that the price earnings ratio is a decimal, 5.77. Again, that just shows the spread between the market price currently and the earnings per share. Dividend yield. Investors would like dividends. A lot of our investors like dividends. So this is just a way of measuring, is the dividend large enough for the price maybe that I spent for that common stock? So very similar to our return on common stock, right? We simply, in this case, take our dividends, though, per common share and divide it by the market price per common share. Just a return measurement. Again, these are some that you probably will never use, but again, with our computations here and with our formulas, we can just kind of plug them in and compute the answers. The dividend payout ratio, how well are we paying out our net income? And here again, many investors would like a large number, right? So looking at our common dividends that we did get from this year, obviously some is also invested in the company and not distributed. But here we're looking at our net income. Again, we have to subtract the preferred dividends. That's our denominator, and we divide that into our common shares. This is on page 860, part of our profitability ratios. And we'll just, again, plug it in basically as we do our problem. Example 13 is our example where we're computing the dividends per share, the dividend yield, and the dividend payout ratio. So let's just take a look. Dividends per share, 1 million were the dividends declared and paid on 800,000 shares. So in this case, obviously, it's 1.25 per share is what the dividend is. The yield then is we're taking our dividends per share, which is 125, and we're going to divide it by the market price per share, which in this case is 15. %. And then our ratio, our dividend payout ratio, is taking our dividends again, in dollars on top, and we're dividing by the net income minus our preferred dividend. Remember, they get paid first. So we got to take that out of our net income. And in this case, 0.48. So half, right? Half of the dividends went, half of the dividends came out of our net income basically after paying the preferred. So let's just say 50% of net income left, right, was paid out. The other 50% obviously then was retained within the company. A lot of companies don't do high dividends because they reinvest that money, right? So a company has a decision, and that's what the board of directors has to do at the end of the year. They got to decide how much they want to keep and how much they want to pay out as dividends. In this case, about almost 50% of the net income was paid out in dividends. Pretty high number actually. Okay. That is basically the discussion on our remaining computations or formulas. What I have now are exercises that we can practice these. These won't take long, maybe another 30 minutes or so. Problems that we're going to start with are on page 883. 883. Starting with exercise 53, 54, and then finally remaining 55. The information for this, all three of these problems are in the table on page 883. And first off, question number 1, calculate the average common stockholders' equity. So I'm on problem 53. Number 1 is trying to come up with this average common shareholders' equity. So like the example in the book, we'll basically take our total stockholders' equity and subtract off the preferred stock. So is everybody with me that's with me? How much is the preferred stock in the problem on page 883? What's the number? How much in dollars is the preferred stock? Allison, thank you. 4 million. Perfect. Excellent. So what I'm going to do is basically, I'm going to take 16. That doesn't matter which way I go, I guess. Let's start with the January number. It was 15,800,000. I'm going to subtract off the 4 million. That gives me 11,800,000. We'll do the same thing for the end of the year. End of the year, we were at 16,050,000. I'll just put this in a different color. And also had 4 million. That didn't change. So that gives me 12,050,000. We add these two together, right? And divide by 2 to get our average. So 11,008,000 plus 12,050,000. Add those two together. And divide by 2. You should end up with, let me put this in a different color, 11,925,000. So that is the answer to question number 1. What is the average shareholder equity? In this case, 11,925,000. After that, they want us to compute the return on stockholders' equity. It says here, last year the net income was $3,182,000. But remember, we're only looking at the common shareholders. What or how much is the preferred dividend amount? What percentage are we going to use? The 8%. Very good, Carla. So 8% of how much, Carla? Are we going to multiply that? 4 million. The 4 million. Very good. So that's what comes off of the net income. So 320,000 coming off of the 3,182,000. I got 2,860,000 $2,862,000. Is that okay with everybody at home? $2,862,000 is what's left. Okay, great job, guys. Sandy, what is that percent then? What is my return on stockholder equity? Maybe I have to go back here. So what am I, oh, Sandy, I'm just taking the 2,000,008 divided by the 11,000,009. 24%? Is that right, guys? Okay, 24, awesome, thank you. So I'm going to put that answer right here in red. So my return on stockholders' equity is 24%. Excellent. All right, so that's all of number 53. Going to 54 then, compute the dollar amount of preferred dividends. I already know that. That was $3 million or $320,000. So I'm kind of scrunched for numbers here, aren't I? Let's do this. I'm going to move this down. I'm going to compute my earnings per share. Down below here. Earnings per share is net income. The formula is here, net income minus preferred, and divided by the weighted average of the common shares outstanding. So if I'm looking at our problem, earnings per share, let's just do 3,182,000. We're going to subtract the preferred dividends, which is 320,000, and our weighted average number of outstanding common shares. How many shares outstanding did we have at the beginning of the year? I'm looking for number of shares.
Is that like 1 million or?
Yeah, it's just the 1 million. So if you look at the equity section, common stock had a par value of $3. So if the common stock had 3 million total in dollars, divide by the $3 per share, there must have been 1 million shares outstanding. And if you also look at the problem, I had 1 million shares outstanding at the beginning of the year, and the number didn't change, right? I had 1 million at the end of the year. Well, if I divide that sum by 2, I'm going to get 1 million. So now it's a pretty simple computation. I'm going to get my amount here, which is 2,862,000, which is what we computed before. I'm going to divide by 1 million shares. So the top number is $1. The bottom number is shares. Obviously, that's $2.862 per share. That is our answer for our earnings per share. Earnings per share, 2.862. And they want us to round to 2 decimal places. So I really should not show the 2, right? I should just be at $2.86 per share. I'm just looking at question number 3. So question number 2, what is the number of average common shares? Question 2, it's 1 million. Question 3, it is 2.86. I think we have a question 4, right? Oh, price earnings ratio. Price earnings ratio, which is here. Oh, right down here. So here is question 4. Market price is what, guys? In 54. $51.50. Everybody see where the 51.50 is? Yep. Good job, Allison. Excellent. 51.50 is given to us. It has to be because it's market. So 51.50, and I'm going to divide by $2.86. Eric, what is my price earnings ratio? Using this division. $18. Guys, is Eric right? 18? Awesome. Great. Great job, Eric. So 18, and it's a number, it's not a percent. Basically 18 times the earnings per share, right, is our market price. Now, investors might say, oh, that's a big number. I'm not going to buy because the stock is too overpriced, right? I'm going to look for a lower number, and maybe the stock is not valued correctly. So it might be a better buy if I wait till it gets lower. So something that investors look to see whether a stock is overpriced from what their dividend payouts are. Okay. Our last two computations here are in problem 55. They're right in the middle here. So for problem 55, it says assume that the dividends paid to stockholders for last year were 2.6 million and that the market price per share of common stock again is 51.50. So let's do I turn the page here, I'm hoping it has dividend yield. Oh, compute the dividends per share first. Dividends per common share. Well, this is 2.6 million. I'm going to put that here. What am I going to divide that 2.6 million by? What did we say the shares outstanding were? That's the 1 million. Very good, Carla. Yep. So our 1 million shares is what we said were the average shares outstanding. So obviously that would give us $2.6 of dividends paid per share. And that's what we need for our numerator, our top number. It says dividends per common share. So that's this number, $2.6. And I'm going to divide that by our market price, which is $51.50. So it doesn't look like 10%, right? What are we looking at here? About 5?
Yeah, 5.0%.
I got 5 point. Oh, I should look. How do they want this? I'm assuming that is a percent. Round to 2 decimal places. So 0.05. Or 5%. Whether that number is good, bad, it's really hard to say. Every company is different. So question number 2, compute the dividend yield. That's what we just did, 5%, 0.05. Compute, number 3 is compute the dividend payout ratio. So we have our common dividends. Our common dividends were 2 million. I'm going to switch colors here so I don't get this. 600,000. We're going to divide by our net income again, minus our preferred, which was our block number here. Let me just move that up to here. $2,862,000. And Sandy, what is that division? 2,000,006 divided by 2,000,008. Seems like a very high payout. Extremely high. Sandy, are you with us? Yep, she is. .908, and they want us to go to 2 decimal places. So 0.91. That sound good, guys? 0.91. If I'm rounding, I'll put this in green. 0.91 is the question number 3 in problem 55. 0.91 or 91%. So almost all of their net income that's left after computing the preferred is distributed to our common shareholders, so a significant amount. They must not need the money for internal purposes, which is pretty rare, I would think. Most companies want to keep the money rather than distribute the dividends. But remember, more dividends means a higher market price. So a lot of people look for a higher market price on their stock, right? So the catch-22 in a lot of cases. Okay, that's all of them. What do you think, guys? Any questions at home about any of these? What do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 profitability ratios. Any questions on them? I have one more we can practice with. Allison, you're good, thank you. How about Eric, Sandy? Can you think of anything yet? Okay. Thank you, Eric. All right, thank you, Sandy. Well, let's just look at our next one since we do have some time. It's 58. Not looking at anything really big here. I do have one thing that's not on here. Question number 1. And maybe I should put it on the bottom here. It says return on assets. So I'm going to add that one. So this is problem 58. Question 1. Is what is the return on assets? Now the formula for return on assets, I'm going to use my reference sheet here. It's net income plus interest expense net of tax. And the tax rate is what, guys? The 34%. Very good. So I'm going to take my net income, 5 million. I'm going to add my interest, My interest expense was 400,000. But remember, I'm going to do a double parens, right? We got to multiply that 400,000 by 1 minus the tax rate. Which is 0.66. One minus 0.34 is 0.66. So 0.66 times 400,000 is how much? I'm going to make this number different. Why do they use such a weird tax rate? Why don't they just go with 0.4? 0.34 times 400,000. I got 136. Eric, no, it's 1 minus the tax rate. Oh, wait a minute. Did I do mine wrong? 400,000 times 0.66. You're right. I'm sorry. You're right, Eric. 264,000. So that's added to the 5 million. And we're going to divide that by our assets, right? Our average total assets, which in this case is 60 million. So Allison, what is this return? Like 8 or 9% maybe? Just looking at the numbers. Allison? Okay, I'll show you them again. We've got 5 million plus the 264. And then divide that by the 60 million asset amount. Yep, that looks good. 0.0877. Let me just put that out. Or 8.77%, right? Everybody agree, Carlo? Good? Okay, great job. Thank you. All right, our next one is return on stockholders' equity. Let's see. What do we need for return on stockholders' equity? We need net income. We need the preferred dividends. That's given. Net income is given. And average common shareholders' equity is also given. So basically, we're just going to throw the numbers in. Not as exciting as the last one. So net income was 5 million. Preferred dividends given to us at 400,000. The average common stockholders' equity is a dollar amount, 20 million. So 4,600,000 divided by 20 million. Sandy, do you have that number? 0.23. I'm going to put that over here. 0.23 for 23%. That's our stockholders' return on equity. So a pretty good return for their investment, right? Remember, the investors invested $20 million into the operation, and they're getting a 23% return on that investment. Not bad. Earnings per share is question number 3. Again, same numerator. I'm going to take 5 million minus 400,000 is 4.6 million. We'll change colors here. And we're going to divide by the number of shares outstanding. And that is 800,000. So we're just kind of putting in the numbers in here. Carla, what is that?
For which one? The earnings per share?
Earnings per share.
It's 575.
Cool. Just dividing our two numbers. The next jump to the price earnings ratio. So we're on question 4 now. So I'm going to switch colors again. Question 4 is here, the bottom one. Since we got our earnings per share at 5.75, our market price is 40. So $40 per share divided by $5 per share is 7 something. Allison? 6.96, thank you. So question 4 is 6.96. Now this is just a number, right? It's not a percent. Next is our dividend yield. Dividends per common. Well, we'd have to figure that out, right? Dividends per common share. How do I do that, guys? I'm right here now. How do I get this dividends per common? What do I divide?
These are the 100 divided by the 800,000.
Yeah, very good, Carla. We're going to take our, I'm going to put that on the side here, our $1.2 million of dividends. This is the common dividends, not the preferred, right? And we're going to divide that by the 800,000 shares of common, right? And that's, is it 1.4?
1.5.
1.5, thank you. So this is equal to 1.5 share dividends per common share. And that's what I'm going to put here. 1.5 dividends, and the market price was 40. So what we're left with is, what's our yield here? Eric, what's our yield? 0.0375, 3%. Okay, that's our dividend yield. That's the answer for question 5. Put that up here. Excellent, excellent. All right, our last one, guys. Compute the dividend payout ratio. So here we have our common dividends, again, given to us, 1.2 million. I'm going to make this in purple. Let's put that down here, 1.2 million of common dividends. I'm going to divide by our net income minus preferred dividends. My net income was 5 million. Our preferred dividends were how much? 400,000, right? It just happens to be the same as our interest expense. So 5 million minus 400,000. I'm going to put that in parentheses. 5 million of net income minus our 400,000 of preferred dividends. And Sandy, what's our payout ratio? You got the last one. 0.2608. That look good? Carla, you're kind of my auditor here.
Yeah.
Sounds good?
Mm-hmm.
0.2608 or 26.08%, right? That's it. That's our last ratio computation. So 26% of the net income basically is distributed out to the common shareholders. Again, a pretty significant amount, and it just shows what's kept and what's distributed, right? All right. Any final questions on this, guys? Final thoughts? Any at home? Okay. That's the only problems I had on schedule today. I don't have any more to go through. It's just a matter of finding the right numbers, right, to go into our formulas. And be careful with some of those computations. Make sure you're looking at the common dividends versus the preferred dividends and so forth. And always look for this, be careful with this net of tax computation here on the return on assets. Make sure you subtract the corporate tax rate when we're multiplying it against that interest expense. So just a couple little tricky ones that we have to be careful of when we're doing our problems and exams. Okay, guys, the rest of the class is yours. You can work on your assignment or exam if you'd like, if you're already done with your assignments. And this will conclude then our course. Let me know if you have any questions as you're doing your assignments and so forth or exam. I certainly will respond as soon as I can on my phone or wherever I might be. It was a pleasure having you all. I'm not sure if I'm going to see any of you going forward. If I'm not, good luck with your future and or future directions. You were all super students to have in class, and I really enjoyed this semester. I hope you did too. So take care, everyone.